The boy was born nearly immortal, and for the past 9 years, his mother has been trying to kill him. A boy named Louis Drax tells his story. He was always told that one day, something terrible would happen to him. The first misfortune struck at birth when he was born by cesarean section. At 16 weeks, a chandelier fell into his crib. He's been bitten by spiders, stung by bees, and nearly electrocuted. He's had food poisoning multiple times, caught viruses and infections. On his 9th birthday, he went on a picnic with his parents. Everyone seemed happy, like his mom and dad loved each other again, and nothing bad would happen. But then he fell off a cliff into the water. Underwater, Louis thought he was dead. It was very cold, but a man's voice told him that this was his 9th life and that together they would solve the mystery of this extraordinary boy who attracts misfortune. At the scene, a task force was working, and a search helicopter was flying overhead. Detectives learned that Louis's mother was found at the roadside, his father was missing, and search parties were sent out for him. Louis was pulled from the water, placed on a stretcher, and hoisted into the helicopter. They resuscitated him all the way to the hospital, with his inconsolable mother by his side. Once at the hospital, he was rushed to the ER, but the doctor couldn't save him and pronounced him dead. On a TED stage, a man shares his experience with sleepwalking. As a child, he searched for a mysterious him in his dreams. He didn't want to forget those memories, but they grew hazy over time. He believes the brain is more than the sum of its parts, and that everyone, even those who are traumatized, forms connections with others. After Louis died, he was taken to the morgue for an autopsy. However, when the doctor pulled back the sheet, the boy started to breathe. He was immediately taken back to the operating room. After his TED talk, an assistant told the man he had an urgent phone call. At the hospital, a nurse told him about Louis Drax. The boy had been dead upon arrival and was prepped for an autopsy, but then showed signs of life. The doctor asked about the cause of his injuries and was told that Louis fell off a cliff. An MRI revealed that half of his bones were broken. Standing by the child's room, the surgeon worries he misdiagnosed the boy, but the man reassures him, explaining that in children, hyperthermia and near drowning can mimic death. He asks about Louis's condition and learns he has multiple injuries and is in a coma. In the corridor, he introduces himself to Mrs. Drax as Dr. Pascal, a specialist in pediatric comas, who will be overseeing her son. After listening to him, she begs to see her son, and the doctor permits her. In her son's room, she tells him how extraordinary he is. Louis thinks it's not easy being the mother of a walking disaster. Once, he wet himself in an elevator and dirtied his mother's skirt when he hugged her, forcing her to dry it in a restroom under a hand dryer. He understands it's hard for her and blames himself. That's why he visited Perez, an old man, about 40, with a big, round face. At first, Louis didn't want to talk to him, but over time, they discussed everything, and Perez, bound by doctor-patient confidentiality, could never reveal their conversations. During one session, Louis asked how much their talk cost. He wanted to be an adult, just talking and earning lots of money. Perez smirked and asked if he really wanted to grow up. Louis replied that it was a silly question and he would never grow up. Louis was moved to another unit, a coma ward. Dr. Pascal, speaking with the surgeon, asked about the accident. The surgeon, surprised, asked if he hadn't spoken to Delton and suggested watching the news. It said the incident wasn't an accident. The boy was likely pushed by his father, who was now on the run. Dr. Pascal decided to talk to Louis. He introduced himself as Alan Pascal and told Louis that he was in a coma. He also shared his theory that some children don't want to wake up until they feel safe. Louis visited Perez again, his arm in a cast. He explained how he attracts misfortune. Serious accidents land him in the hospital, where everyone cares for him, and he loves recovering. After hearing this, Perez suggested that Louis enjoys being ill, which is why he attracts all these misfortunes. Inspector Delton came to the hospital and informed the doctors that Peter Drax is the prime suspect. She asked if there was security on duty at the entrance and requested they stay vigilant. The doctors asked her to tell them everything she knew about the boy. Delton explained that Louis was a difficult child who saw a psychotherapist, Dr. Perez, and had problems at school and with friends. Alan reviewed his medical records and saw many physical injuries. Delton mentioned that the psychotherapist believed Louis hurt himself to get attention, but the injuries started from birth. Pascal recalled information about the father being prone to violence, but the inspector ignored this and asked about the boy's chances of waking up. The doctor explained that based on the latest EEG, Louis was in a vegetative state, which was very bad. Dr. Pascal and Mrs. Natalie Drax took a walk, with her worrying that her son might never wake up. However, Pascal believed they just needed to find a way to reach the boy and convince him to return. Suddenly, a wall of water appeared by Louis's bed, and a strange creature covered in seaweed emerged, asking Louis to continue telling his story. Turning to the creature, Louis recounted a time when he and his father went to an aquarium. They stayed in San Diego for the weekend to give his mom a break. There, they met Caitlin, an old acquaintance of his dad's. Louis wasn't happy to meet her. She was with her husband and 3 kids. After the show, back at the hotel, Louis asked who she was. Peter explained she was his first wife and asked Louis not to tell his mom to avoid upsetting her. As soon as they got home, Louis nearly blurted out about Caitlin to his mom. Distressed, she suggested he go watch TV, and as soon as he left, a fight broke out between his parents. At Dr. Perez's office, the doctor asked why Louis told about the aquarium incident. Louis didn't see what the big deal was. His parents didn't love each other and wanted a divorce but stayed together because of him. He also knew that his father wasn't his biological dad and was just pretending. Dr. Yannick had guests over, including Alan and his wife. Natalie was also among the guests, sitting by the pool. Alan noticed her surrounded by mostly male guests. Alan's wife, Sophie, noticed him looking at Natalie. Inside the house, Alan ran into Natalie and they started talking. In the middle of their conversation, Sophie approached, and Alan introduced the 2 women. Mrs. Drax decided to bring Louis' pet hamster to the hospital, but Dr. Pascal informed her that pets weren't allowed. He made an exception for her. Natalie suggested they go for a walk since it was such a lovely day. In his room, the boy follows his hamster with a very thick and heavy book, trying to crush it. After several attempts, he succeeds. During a session with Dr. Perez, the doctor asks about the poor hamsters and why he kills them. The boy explains that a small rodent's lifespan is 2 years, and if that time is up, it can be killed. Worried, the doctor decides to talk to the mother, but she refuses to listen and decides Louis will no longer see Perez. Angry, Louis collects the hamster's droppings in an envelope and sends them to the psychotherapist. The strange creature, which had been listening to Louis' story, asks why he got so angry at the doctor. Louis responds that Perez betrayed him by promising not to tell anyone anything. During a walk, Alan asks Natalie why Louis stopped seeing Perez. She explains that the doctor was very suspicious of Peter, and she thought he wanted to cause trouble between her and her husband. Though she's now unsure, she has no one else, her parents are dead, and she has no friends. She has a sister, but they don't speak. Pascal offers to listen if she wants to talk. Natalie then shares her story. It was her and Louis' birthday, Peter came over, and she organized a picnic. Everything was wonderful until they went to the canyon and started arguing on the way. Peter was upset she stopped Louis' therapy, and she didn't want to reveal the real reason, so Peter became aggressive. Louis got scared and ran off, with Peter chasing him. Louis stood at the cliff's edge, and she still remembers his look as he fell. He didn't cry or scream, just looked at her. Alan asks if Peter had ever been physically violent with her or Louis, but she doesn't answer. She says she met Peter when she was 18. He was her first and only man. Looking at her, Alan tries to comfort her. In gratitude, Natalie kisses his cheek, but a spark ignites between them, leading to a passionate kiss. Suddenly, she sees Louis waking up. Rushing to him, the mother and doctors try to stabilize him, but Louis seems not to hear them, repeatedly asking where his father is before falling back into a coma. Peter comes to Louis' room, telling him he needs to go to San Diego for a while. Louis starts crying, thinking it's because he told his mom about Caitlin, but Peter reassures him it has nothing to do with that. At the hospital, Louis is sent for more tests. Alan sits by his bed and talks to him. Today, he brought Louis' favorite book to read to him, but an odd noise distracts the doctor. Turning towards the sound, he notices some debris on the floor and follows the trail. Entering one of the rooms, he sees the strange seaweed-covered creature, which raises its head, and then Alan wakes up. Alan and Yannick are playing tennis. He asks about Sophie and mentions that everyone saw him with Natalie in the garden. At that moment, his phone rings. Answering it, he hears Mrs. Drax, who says that Peter seems to have been at her house. When he goes to her place, she shows him threatening letters. They go to the police with them. There, after examining the letter, an expert concludes it was written with a non-dominant hand to disguise the authorship. Going back home was dangerous, so he suggests she stay at the hospital in a special room for staff. Dr. Pascal goes to a psychiatric hospital to talk to Dr. Perez. He wants to know if Perez has a theory about the boy's traumas. Perez initially thought the child was responsible, but some details didn't match. He shows Pascal a letter the boy sent him. After reading it, Alan takes out the threatening letter and asks Perez to look at it. The therapist says it's definitely Louis' words, as he had a distinct way of speaking. Alan asks what Perez knows about the father, but he only knows a little. He was a boxer, liked to drink, and had various theories about their marriage. Looking out the window at their home, the boy asks his mom what dad will give him, maybe another hamster. Seconds later, he hears a car and joyfully runs to meet his father. Dad gives him a gift, a hamster cage, and suggests they go on a picnic. On the way, they solve puzzles, and Peter asks permission to take their son on vacation, but mom doesn't like the idea. Dr. Pascal returns to his office and unexpectedly meets his wife Sophie. She brings a letter that arrived at their home and reads it. Unfolding the page, the boy sees it's a new threatening letter. Inspector Delton came to the boy, but he's still in a coma and can't testify. Alan thinks Natalie is stalking Peter, but he doesn't want to share her version of events with the woman. She tells the doctor that Mr. Drax isn't the boy's biological father, but the boy knows. She hid from him that she wanted to give the son up for adoption to other people, and he understands why. She also informs him that Peter's mother will visit in a few days. She wants to see the letters and visit the boy. Alan goes to Natalie and asks her why she didn't say Peter wasn't the child's father. Why lie? She explains that his father Louis was named Joseph, they were together only once, and she wouldn't wish such circumstances of conception on any woman. The doctor says leaving the child was a brave step. She's surprised he knows about it. He tells her Delton came, but didn't say anything else. She apologizes for deceiving him. She's been hurt too often and doesn't trust men. He convinces her they're not all the same, and their conversation turns into a kiss, then lovemaking. Louis stands on the edge of a cliff. Turning around, he hears his parents arguing again. But as soon as he approaches them, they fall silent and continue to enjoy their time with their son. Sitting beside his son's bed, Natalie tells him about the first time she almost lost him and how they met his dad. Watching his mother from the side, the boy doesn't understand why she's telling him all this. A figure from the seaweed nearby says he doesn't have to listen to it and suggests going to a different place. Louis agrees and follows the creature, which leads him into a cave. A graphologist comes to the hospital and takes handwriting samples from the doctors for analysis. At that moment, Pascal is distracted by a nurse who tells him he's urgently needed in the ward. Rushing there, he hears noise and voices from a distance. It's Louis' grandmother, Violet Dax, who has arrived, but Natalie doesn't want to let her see her grandson. Escorting the woman to his office, Pascal questions her about Peter. Just then, Inspector Delton enters his office and informs them that Peter has been found dead. Standing on the edge of the cliff, a strange creature suggests jumping down, promising no pain. After a moment's thought, the boy jumps down. They both swim underwater to a cave. Dr. Pascal tells Louis that his father has died. Entering the cave, the creature says that somewhere on the wall, he wrote the names of his wife and son and asks for help finding that place. Meanwhile, Alan begins reading a book to the boy. The child asks if the creature knows any interesting stories and requests to hear about a bat. The creature begins telling a story about 3 bats, 1 male and 2 females. He also talks about how he loves and is proud of one little guy. After listening, the boy says he really doesn't want the creature to die because he's his dad. In the morgue, Peter's autopsy revealed severe decomposition and bloating, but he was identified through dental records. It's likely he fell from the cliff into the ravine and was pulled into the cave. They found lots of seaweed in his intestines, indicating he survived the fall but died from pneumonia. At that moment, a second inspector received a message stating Peter did not write the letters. Alan wakes up in his office chair and goes to see Macy. She tells him he sleepwalked, approached Louis, then went back to his post, took out his notepad, wrote a prescription, crumpled it, and threw it away. Pascal asks to see the prescription and notices it's made out to Natalie Drax, with insulin and chloroform prescribed. Struck by suspicion, he looks up and sees a camera. In the office, he and the inspectors review surveillance footage. In one video, he sees himself holding a pen with his left hand, even though he's right-handed. Delton asks for the prescription and finds that the handwriting matches the letters. She finds it hard to believe the boy could control the doctor's body while he sleeps. She also mentions Peter's body was found 500 yards from Louis, unlikely to be a coincidence. Dr. Pascal decides to find Perez again. Alan asks the doctor if he thinks the mother is involved in the boy's traumas. Perez doesn't quite understand what he means. Alan finds it strange that the boy made him write those letters. Perez believes the letters came from the boy's mind. Maybe he's trying to communicate something. Perez suggests trying a particular method to find out more. Alan, with sensors connected to his head, begins to hypnotize the young man. After some time, he succeeds, and the boy's consciousness enters the doctor's body. Louis starts recounting the events of that day. They went on a picnic, ate various delicious foods, including a chocolate cake. Louis made a wish aloud for his father to be his real dad. However, his parents started arguing over candy. His mother offered candy to him, but his father also wanted some. For some reason, his mother adamantly refused to give any to his father, saying she made them only for her son. The argument escalated, and Louis ran away. His father caught up with him and asked him to wait in the car. The argument between his parents grew more heated, and at one point, his mother pushed his father. He lost his balance and fell off the cliff. When Louis saw this, his mother tried to take him away, but he backed away, thinking he had 6 steps to safety, not realizing there were only 5, and he fell from the cliff. Suddenly, Louis' heart stopped. Alan urgently brings him out of hypnosis and rushes to perform CPR. All this time, his mother had been harming him, adding raw meat juice to his food, setting up electric shocks, and suffocating him with a pillow. Eventually, they managed to restart the boy's heart and stabilize him. Dr. Pascal moves away from his wife. When Alan arrives at the hospital, he learns about Natalie's diagnosis. She has Munchausen syndrome by proxy. Walking down the corridor, Perez explains what this entails. A perpetrator inflicts harm on another, often a child, in exchange for attention and sympathy. They enter a room where Natalie stands by the window, smiling sweetly and caressing her significantly swollen belly. Beside Louis, his grandmother sits, reading him a book. Throughout his life, the boy awaited his 9th year, as 9 was his favorite number. Earlier in his life, everything was terrible, but being in a coma wasn't so bad. There was no need to worry or miss his father. However, his dad tells him he doesn't have to stay there. He can wake up. There's a wonderful world out there, still full of many unknown and interesting things. Louis doesn't understand why he should leave if his father won't be there. His dad assures him he'll always be by his side, always in his heart. Saying goodbye to his father, the boy wakes up from his coma and opens his eyes. What would you do if you were the boy, once you found out the whole truth about your mother? Share your thoughts in the comments below, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next videos.